Thank you very
Just
much for
got
doing this.
Well, I very much appreciate the opportunity to talk to the community. So thank
Awesome.
you, and I hope this technically is coming across for you okay, the sound and everything.
Yep, it looks good. Obviously, you're in a warmer climate. You're able to be outside. It's a little cooler where I am.
I know it. Why I come here. I come to New Zealand and teach from about January through March. So I leave California in the winter and then come here for the summer.
Oh,
But climate change has had such a big effect that it's been warmer in Santa Cruz, California for the winter than it's been here for the summer.
oh
So,
wow, wow.
but I'll search for the warm.
You got the right way of living, that's for sure. So I'll just get going here. The first question. So what I'm doing, I don't know if you know anything about the project, probably not, but I'm interviewing all sorts of various people from leaders of their fields, whether it's science, religion, the arts. And I'm asking them all very similar questions, trying to get an idea of the perspectives of various archetypes of humanity. And for me, you represent a very definite archetype, and I'm very happy to be able to get your opinion on this.
All right.
So
I'm
the
very happy to offer what may be an educated or a non-educated opinion of some
yeah,
kind.
whatever it is, it's an opinion. So, how would you describe the current state of the world?
Everything is right on schedule, Randall. This is, we're going through a process. It's a fractal pattern, which is nature is built on a fractal geometry. And fractal geometry has a very interesting characteristic to it, and that is because fractal geometry uses the same equation. You solve the equation, you get an answer, and then you put that answer that you just got into the equation and solve it again, which means it's infinite. Every time you solve it, you get a new answer. You put it back in. Well, there's a fundamental characteristic, and that is that by using the same formula over and over and over and over again, you get patterns that are repeated over and over again. And in the mystical sense, when they talk about as above, so below, this is an absolute scientific principle of nature because the geometry, fractal geometry, that repetitious use of an equation causes that repetition of pattern. So if you understand some level, at any one level, you understand something, you can apply it to another level. And so I'm a cell biologist. And so, well, what do you do with cell biology? Well, I understand the human body. How do I understand the human body? Because a cell is a miniature human. A cell has every function. A cell with a nucleus has every function that you have: respiration, digestion, excretion, cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, even immune system. And every cell is a free living entity. Well, the relevance about that is if you understand how a cell carries out its functions, you must understand how a human carries out its function because we're made out of cells. So any function that we have comes from cells. So it's like, oh, study cell, understand the human. Okay? So if you understand the fractal nature of what's going on, is a repetition and evolution that has not been discussed in normal textbooks. They've missed the point. And the point is this, is that number one, conventional up until now, and thank goodness the science is just changing at the front end, everything's been based on genes. More genes, more power. Humans have tremendous numbers of genes. Worms have little numbers of genes. And we are categorized in hierarchy, everything on a gene thing. Well, the Human Genome Project reveals a very simple fact. We have the same number of genes, 19,000 genes, as the smallest little worm they study in genetics, which is about a millimeter long. And so the whole idea is what? 19,000 genes to make a human, 19,000 genes to make a worm. All of a sudden, that vision of genes, well, that's not where it's at. And where it's at is the intelligence of the cell is the membrane or the skin. And for logical reasons. The skin is right between the inside and the outside. The skin can read what's going on in the world and what's going on in you. And in fact, in human embryology, the fractal part about that is the nervous system comes from the skin. So why is that relevant? Because a membrane is the skin of a cell. The first organisms were bacteria, and they lived in little capsules, just like medicine capsules, for example. And their size is totally limited because the capsule on the outside said, this is how much membrane you can have. A bacterium can learn, maybe half a dozen to a dozen things. And that's the limit of learning for a bacterium. It can learn something new, how to be antibiotic resistant. And it can learn about 5, 6, 7, 8 of these things. But that's the limitation. And the reason is for every bit of knowledge, you need a piece of membrane surface area to represent what that knowledge is, which are proteins. And so what's the relevance? The answer is this. The surface of the cell is not just a skin, but it's a brain. And that the limitations of learning push it to how much surface area you have. You got a little surface area, 5, 6 things, man, that's what you're going to learn. But you live in a community. You live in a community, you share all the awareness, okay? Bacteria first. Then bacteria form communities with a membrane around it. So now we have a community of bacteria under one skin, but it evolves to something called the amoeba. The amoeba is a community that is integrated, and they're all living under a skin, but it had thousands of times more membrane. What does that mean? Well, if surface area is intelligence, then amoeba is 1,000 times more intelligent than bacteria. Okay, and then the next part that comes interesting is you say, well, the amoeba reaches a certain size, and when it reaches that certain size, it can't get any bigger for a very simple reason, and that is because if it's like the amoeba is like a balloon. If the skin blows up too much, you put too much water in a balloon, it ruptures. Well, if it ruptures, then the cell's dead. So the bacteria reach a certain size, stopped. What did they do? They formed a community to share awareness. Okay? And then I say, well, what happened next? Well, that community evolved to a higher organism called an amoeba. I go, okay, cool. Then what happened? Well, for another billion years, there were just bacteria and amoebas here, single-celled organisms. But at some point, pressure got tough, and what happened? You needed more awareness. I said, well, how do you get more awareness? The cell reached its biggest size. It gets any bigger, it ruptures like a water balloon. Evolution stops. Can't make a smarter cell. I go, no. Cells start to come together in a community. So every plant and every animal that you see outside in the world is a community of single cells. A human being is a community of 50 trillion cells. Point. We're not a single entity, we're a community, but we're a whole new thing. A human is a new thing. Yeah, but it's made out of 50 trillion cells. They're the living things. Okay? So what does it say? Bacteria reaches a certain size membrane, can't get any bigger, joins in a community, makes a bigger thing, 1,000 times bigger membrane, amoeba. Then I go, and now what? The amoebas grew for a long time, but now they join into communities, reach 50 trillion amoebas under your skin, and create the new human. Well, the human is the cell. The individual human. We're smart. Our brain's got so many folds in it. Why? The folds in the brain are surface area, tucking in more surface area, okay? Packed as much brains as you're going to get in this head. Now what? You reach the limit of intelligence of a human. Then what? History repeats itself, fractal image, people come together and form communities. So first there's families, and then there's bigger communities and cities and states and countries. But the fact is this, the evolution is all people are cells in the body of a superorganism called humanity. And we haven't seen the wholeness yet, but we're in the process. And the thing was, the latest evolution of that was the internet, which was a nervous system to put 7 billion human cells in contact with each other to create a sharing of knowledge and to create the new organism, humanity. It's a superorganism. And we are cells. When we finally recognize where we're moving, then all of a sudden the conflict that we have in this world will end, because you and I are cells in the same body. Myself and people in Turkey, Iraq, we're all cells in the same body. That's why there's an upheaval here. What's happening? Fractal image. So this is so cool. If I get a chance, can I just tell you too? Because fractal image says that the patterns repeat. And then I say, well, what's the pattern of evolution of animals? Because we came from cells, and then there's this whole lineage of animals. I say, why is that relevant? Because if we're a complete animal and we're moving to the next level, we're going to go through characteristic phases, the same thing. So I'll just talk about the vertebrate level, which we know is fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Okay, the first cultures on this planet, besides the little family communities and stuff like that, were equivalent to fish because they needed to stay near the water. That's where life was. You couldn't go anywhere. There was no technology. You eat from the ocean, from the water. You eat. Okay. Fish face was mariculture. The next level is that animals learned to go on land. From fish, they went to amphibians, but they carried the water with them. Okay? Human civilization from the fish phase evolved to agriculture by being able to take the water, find the water, get the water, and take it in the land and not be restricted at the surfaces, the edges of the continents where all original life was. So we went to agriculture. So we went mariculture to agriculture. Fish. So we have fish, amphibians. Then I said, well, the next one is reptiles. And I said, well, what are reptiles? Well, they were the organisms totally built to dominate the land. So they didn't come from the sea. They were really on the land. And they're very much machine-like, very machine-like. I mean, they're almost digital when you see their heads click and their eyes pop, and they're very machine-like. Well, here's the interesting thing. The reptiles started out as small little 5-inch lizards. And then what'd you make? You make 50-foot lizard. I said, well, what pattern did you use to make a 50-foot lizard? And the answer was a 5-inch lizard. All it was if the leg of the 5-inch lizard does this movement. I say, how many muscles? He said, well, 10 muscles from the little tiny lizard. I say, how many nerves? 1 nerve. Make that movement. Now I have a 50-foot dinosaur. The blueprint's exactly the same. Now I got a leg that's a massive leg. I don't have 10 muscles. I have 10 million muscles. And I say, how many nerves does it take? 1. The dinosaurs grew off the pattern, but their awareness stayed very small because once you just repeated the pattern, I can make the leg move. I don't need a whole bunch of neurons. Same one will just make all 10 million nerves go. Point. The reptiles are the industrial age. They're the machine age. It's not a coincidence that in our industrial age, the fuel of our industrial age is the blood of the dinosaur. That's what we're using, okay? What happened was the little lizard mom and pop shops grew into corporations. And corporations have a massive body, number of people working, but a relatively small awareness level. So General Motors will make a Humvee in the middle of a gasoline shortage, and here's a car that gets 6 miles in a gallon. Oh, good thinking. So reptilian. It's a machine. It's not, the reptiles fight each other. It's a reptilian war thing, okay? Reptiles only care for themselves. And the more powerful they are is the hierarchy. The bigger the dinosaur, the bigger the tyrannosaurus, the more power. Well, we're living in a reptilian phase where humans see themselves fighting for survival of the fittest and saying, I don't care what it takes, even if I could be smart like Albert Einstein and be fit, or I could be some jerk with an Uzi. I could kill you, and I'm the winner in the game. Darwinian evolution has no morality to it. Darwinian evolution, whoever is the last one standing is the winner of the game. Well, how's that game going today? And I go, well, 1% of the population has the wealth, and 99% has nothing. And all of a sudden you say, well, survival of the fittest, that game is going pretty good. Now we're down to a very small number of fittest at this moment. But what happened? Now this is the cool part because we're coming in. So what we have, an industrial age with a growing corporation and more power in the corporation because the corporation wields the mass and the energy and all that stuff. Not a lot of intelligence. But we'll reach the end because peak oil. Peak oil says, well, the dinosaur blood's running out. The reptilian phase is running out. We're getting out. We're still in it, but it's on a going down slope. And I go, well, what happened? I said, well, the dinosaurs gave rise to the birds. So I say, oh, the industrial age gave rise to the aviation age. And I go, what was the significance? I go, well, the aviation age is because the world was so big. But aviation shrunk this thing down. aviation connected the world, number one, and showed that it isn't as big as you thought it was. And number two, birds have perspective. And so when birds fly up above the ground, they can see down. The dinosaur's walking into the tar pit because it's right in front of its face. And the bird is flying above, going, look at the tar pit. Like that. Birds have perspective, see a bigger vision. Okay, so here's the point. Industrial age leads to aviation. What? 1903. The Orville, Wilbur Wright brothers take off. Beginning of the aviation age. I said, what was the evolution of the aviation age? I said, well, we flew to the moon. I say, oh, that's the limit of our aviation. We left the planet. We flew so far to the moon. That's evolution. I go, yeah, and what did we see? Perspective.
Right.
We got to the moon, and the first picture they took that has become an icon of the world is the Earth on the horizon of the moon. And then I go, oh, so the bird phase took us to the moon. I said, then what happened? They sent back a picture. I said, what did the picture do? 1969. We saw it and said, that's all there is, baby. My God, we got to take care of this place. The hippies came in. I said, well, what are the hippies? Community. Let's take care of each other. Let's help each other. Let's take care of nature. Let's take care of the kids. Let's take care of the pollution in the atmosphere. I said, well, taking care. I said, what does that mean? Nurturing. I said, what's nurturing? The characteristic of mammals. Nurturers. But, now here comes the story. The hippies, the mammals, are small, hanging around underneath the dinosaurs. Because the mammals arose when the dinosaurs were here. And they were the meek. And they had to hide from, try to protect themselves from the dinosaur. So the original meek were the hippies. And now the grandchildren of the hippies are picking up that flag because there's a special reason. They're not part of the reptilian society. They're called the millennial generation. The millennial generation is the people that got educated and say, I can't even find a job. I'm driving a taxi cab and I got a college degree. I'm still at home with mom and I'm 40 years old. I say, why? I can't get into the structure. And I go, that's because the structure is ending. And so what's important about it? Well, we have a large number of millennials, large enough that if they organize in one group, they'll have more power than all the other groups. But they're out there going, woe with me, I can't get a job, I can't get in, the world is against me and all that. And I go, no, you don't understand. You're playing the most important role for a simple reason is this. A structure can only maintain itself as long as people hold it up. We now have half the population doesn't hold up this structure at all. They're out of it. Why is that relevant? You tell a millennial, you say, oh, the stock market's going to crash, and they go, like I own a stock, right? I own nothing. And why is that relevant? Because they don't care. They're not part of the system. Half the world has nothing to do with this system. The system is falling. The old tight asses, excuse me, that are holding onto the reins with their older vision, older than hippies. Those are the madmen type people. Those are the people that were somewhere before hippies. They're the ones like Dick Cheney that are holding on to an old vision. So I say, everything is where it's supposed to be. We are moving from a reptilian age. We're moving into the mammalian age. The mammalian age is nurturing by character, nurturing the planet, nurturing ourselves, bringing us back to what the indigenous people knew 10,000 years ago. This is a garden. It's not a battleground. It's a garden. A garden is a community of cooperative individuals working together in harmony to create something. It's like, yeah, we lost that. And now it's coming back. And we're going to come back into it, but we're going to come back to it as a global civilization because things like the Arab Spring. How did the Arab Spring happen? The answer was simple. The Arab Spring happened because an internet connected people in the Mideast under the tyranny of their leadership to observe everybody else in the rest of the world having this freedom, and they're going, whoa, and boom, break the structure. And it's just happening around the world, and the younger people are going to fully empower themselves. And when they empower themselves, we will transition from a reptilian into a mammalian humanity superorganism. We're all here together, and we all have to maintain this thing, because science has totally revealed we are now deep into the sixth mass extinction of life. 5 times life was just great, just really moving on this planet, and 5 times, boom, something happened and it disappeared. So the last one, like dinosaurs, is it was thought like comet hit the planet and destroyed the environment, wiped out all life, and it started over again. So 5 times life was thriving, and then it died, and then it starts over again. Well, we are now in a beginning of the what is called the sixth mass extinction of life, because we are losing species of organisms on this planet faster than even in previous mass extinctions. And just for example, if you're 40 years old, half the animal life on this planet that was here when you were born, half of it's gone already, and it's accelerating. So it's not going to take 40 years to get rid of the other half. It's a lot faster than that because we're using it much faster. So it basically says we're facing an extinction, and then, of course, then science recognizes it's human behavior that is creating the extinction. So all of a sudden it says, oh, then we have to change. It's like, yes, we have to. We're the ones that have to change. You want to stay here? And I say, well, how are you going to change? I said, well, we have to change this behavior. As Einstein would say, you can't solve the problems with the same thinking that created it. The thinking that we live with, a Darwinian dog eat dog, more for me, less for you. This is a failure, because this is not how evolution occurs, because we now know that evolution is a result of cooperation. And we've been living under a principle of competition, when it turns out, no, that did not promote evolution. Evolution is cooperation among all the organisms in the biosphere, except for us, who decided we don't have to cooperate. We have dominion over it. It's like, you missed it. We missed it. And yet, we've reached now that crisis, and crisis is great. Why? Because crisis precipitates evolution. You're in a crisis, you're going to have to do what? Think different. Because what we've done is what's caused the problem. So we face now the need to make a difference. Even though we may have talked about it for 20 years or 30 years, we say, oh yeah, this is a great way of living, take care of the people, take care of the planet. We never really did it. But now it's not really a choice. Now it's like you either change or you die. Crisis. So we are being pushed into the evolution. And it's on time, as I said, because this is the evolution of nurturing the planet and bringing it back to the First Nations people, Native Americans, who said, this is a garden, take care of it. And the only way we're going to get there is a breakdown of the structure, because you cannot build the sustainable world on top of this faulty foundation that we have. Because this foundation is a competitive dog-eat-dog rat race. It's like, that's not what evolution is. So what does it mean? It has to crash. So I sit here today, I read the headlines, and I go, oh God, that's scary. But then on the other hand, I go, as scary as it is, if it doesn't happen, we're in a worse situation than you can ever imagine. So I welcome this. The crash has to happen, because there's no way to evolve on the foundation of this civilization, which is totally bent on self-destruction at this moment. And so I look outside and I go, yeah, sky is kind of falling down, but if it doesn't fall down, there is no tomorrow. So bring it on, and let's get the young people active, because all those jobs they're looking for are all jobs of bringing the environment back and creating new technologies to live in a garden without the massive footprint the dinosaurs have left in the garden. And so basically, my rambling is coming to an end here, Randall, but I tried to unfold a story here.
That was awesome.
That we're in the right place, and as scary as it looks, it takes something new, and so it's like, okay, this is birthing pain, because the new civilization is here, not in the media. It's not covered by the media. Media doesn't say, hey, underneath all this stuff, there's a lot of great things happening, and the people are waking up, and the people are becoming more spiritual, and people, that doesn't sell Fox News. Fox News show me where the danger is. It's like, okay, we read that, but we're really missing. There's a massive movement under the ground of evolution, and it's people taking care of themselves and people taking care of the planet, and that is the sign of the evolution.
So that foundation that you're talking about, what is the basis for the perspective that comes from? In biology, you suggest that we are just the reactors to signals. So we have,
Yes.
so we really do not create our reality. The reality just shapes us. Is that how you see it?
No, no, we are creators, 100% creators, because we drive the system. What do you want to do with your life? And the answer is, well, what do you want to do with your life? I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but people have been programmed, be disempowered to control them. That's a fact. And it's interesting. I give my lectures and I talk about, well, most people have seen the movie The Matrix, and I go, if you look in the video store, you say, oh, The Matrix, I'll go over there, it's in science fiction department. I go, no. Matrix is a documentary.
Yeah.
We have been programmed. And the thing is, oh, surprise. I go, no, look, 400 years, the Jesuits have said, give me a child until it's 6 or 7, and it will belong to the church for the rest of its life. Or give me a child and I'll show you the man. What were they boasting about? The boasting was, if you give me the 7 years, I will program that child, and they will become what I programmed. And people didn't realize, it's like, yes, that's why all the education programs were to do what? To make you live in fear, disempower you, mess up your biology. Jesus, excuse me, but the concept that in religion, that pleasure is bad and pain is going toward God or something like that. It's like, my God, I can't believe that. It only took like 3 billion years of evolution for an organism to understand that if it feels good, go ahead and do it. And if it hurts, stop doing that. Right. And then now we have an education that comes in your head and says, no, it's just the opposite. If you're feeling good, that's bad. And if it hurts, that's really good. And I go, well, what's the problem now? I said, you are conflicting 3 billion years of evolution with a psychology that is totally antagonistic to the whole thing. That is the foundation of sociopaths. We are creating sociopaths. We have a lot of sex crimes. Why? Because the body has a biology for 3 billion years and says this is the way to go. And then somebody put it in the mind, whoo, if you go there, that's really bad and that's really negative. So in their mind, I can't do this. And they have to do, what's the body? The body is wanting to express itself. How does it do it? Bad behavior. Because the so-called good behavior is the one that's preventing and hassling the system. So it's very interesting. There was a friend of mine. Let's see. I'm trying to think of how to say this. Well, he worked for NIH, National Institute of Health, and he was head of Child Health and Human Development. His name is James Prescott. And his research started with research at University of Wisconsin School of Medicine Primate Center, where there was a Harry Harlow. And Harry wanted to do an experiment with monkeys about love, because at that time, back in the 50s, it thought that love was learned when a baby was nursing. So that's where love comes from. It's learned. It's not inherent. Okay? But you didn't know that. So he said, well, what we want to do is we want to raise a bunch of baby monkeys with mothers and without mothers. And so he set up all these monkeys in cages where they could see each other, they could smell each other, they could hear each other, but they couldn't touch anybody. No touching. And he set them all up because he wanted them to be free of that love thing so they could check on it. So he put but here's what the problem was. Before he could do the experiment, every monkey put into a cage as an infant without touch became a psychopath. If he put 2 monkeys after that from each in a different cage and put them in the same cage, they would avoid each other as much as they could. They'd get in the far corners of the cage. But if they got too close to each other, they would attack each other and go totally violent and one would kill the other. It was like, what's the story? Well, the only thing that was missing is really the touch. So it turns out that, let's put it this way, I could build up stress. Imagine a thermometer, and the mercury goes up. Well, the higher the temperature, the higher the mercury goes up. Now, this is a thermometer, a stress thermometer. Instead of mercury, it's got stress hormones. And I say, as the stress builds up, the hormone level builds up, okay? As it builds up. And I say, well, imagine the picture that they would show, like if the thermometer it gets too hot, what happens? The mercury goes boom and blows out the top, okay? In my stress thermometer, when it gets up to the top, violence is automatic. So even if you take the Dalai Lama and you inject enough adrenaline in Dalai Lama, he'll go totally ballistic. Why? It's not thinking at that point. It's just a protection response. Boom. So here's what the point is, and this is what Prescott's work showed. Holding a baby and giving it physical love, which is called somatosensory affection, like cultures, non-Western cultures where they hold the baby, tie the baby to them, carry the baby with them everywhere they go. The baby's always in direct contact, skin to skin, stuff like that. They get a lot of touching. As compared to us, where you put the baby, put it in the crib by itself, leave it alone. And the idea that touching and pleasure from touching is antagonistic to the belief system, then we have very little touch. And in fact, sometimes touch all of a sudden is like, oh my God, somebody touched me. Like that, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, here's what it turns out. The stress thermometer has a thermostat. I can set it. Wherever I set the thermostat, if the stress reaches the thermostat, it shuts itself off. Here's the point. It's based on touch and pleasure of the child. The more pleasure the child gets, what does the child get understanding about pleasure? I'm living in a safe, supportive, wonderful, healthy environment. The less touch is like, I'm afraid. What's the point? The more touch, the thermostat is set real low. The less touch, it goes up real high. I say, what's the point? I say, if you have the thermostat set low, you start to get stressed. You go, no, I'm cool. No problem at all. I'm good. No stress. It builds up to a thermostat level, says that level. It's like, okay, shut it down, feedback, shut it off. And I say, if you put the thermostat up here, you got a problem. Because if this stuff is shooting up like mercury, and it shoots up, and I have the thermostat right near the top, guess what? I can't shut off the stress hormone before it blows out the top. In other words, I'll build myself to a level of stress, and then I'm going to go violent. Well, Prescott did the first study, and he said, if loving touch is what makes a peaceful population, then I should go back over all the cultures on this planet that have been studied and see which ones gave loving touch to the children and how much they were peaceful cultures. So it turns out 70% of cultures that gave loving touch to their baby were totally peaceful cultures. And he said, what about that other, what's the 30%? Okay, so the second one was this. The first part is bonding with the baby, bonding into the family, bonding into the safety of the community, bonding security. First touch. They found out that there was a second level of touch, but it's related to premarital sex. But that's bonding with another person. So the first one is an infant learning how to bond with a family. And the second phase is the pleasure associated with premarital sex, which is how to bond with another person and create that family thing. So I said, let me review now all the cultures of the planet, check on two things. A, did they give loving touch to the baby? And B, did they allow premarital sex? 100% of those cultures were nonviolent, peaceful cultures. When he put all this together with the study on touch and all the other stuff, James Prescott, who's the head of the Child Health and Human Development, comes out with a paper and says that governments and church have known how to regulate people so they can make them fight. Because if I have my thermostat set real low and the guy comes and knocks on the door and says, listen, we're going to go have a war, and I go, listen, I'm having a good life. You go have a war. I'm going to stay home. I'm having a good thing here. But if you get a person whose thermostat is set up here and you work them up, political get out there in the street, work them up, play some military music, boom, boom, boom. You can push that person into fighting. So the church eliminated all pleasure because by doing that, they had a ready army that they could make them go to the Crusades by working them up and say, come on, let's go kill people. And so when James Prescott wrote that the government and the church were knowingly creating violent population, the first thing that happened is James Prescott got fired. The government got rid of him. Why? It's like, you can't tell people. So we put all the pieces together. We've created and raised a violent population to support a Darwinian belief system, which was the support of an upper class. And the reason why I support an upper class, remember, Darwin gave this theory in the 1800s in England where there was an upper class and a lower class. Survival of the fittest means something very important. People didn't catch it because the word fit means to survive. If you are fit, by definition in the book, you are capable of surviving. I said, yeah, but Darwin didn't talk about survival of the fit. He said survival of the fittest. Right. Oh, well, there's the fit, there's the fitter, then there's the fittest. Fittest is the upper class.
Right.
So when he wrote his book, it justified an upper class ruling and suppressing a lower class for the benefit of the evolution of the planet.
And the irony is that he did that literally by actually stealing the works of another fellow.
Alfred Russel Wallace.
Right.
It wasn't his. And this is an interesting story because it's based on priority in science. Whoever's name is first on the paper has priority. Well, Alfred Russel Wallace sent the complete, most elegant and short paper on a theory of evolution, just a few pages, sent it to Darwin before Darwin didn't have anything. Really, he had a whole bunch of ideas, but he had no picture. Alfred Russel Wallace had the picture paper, wrote the most elegant paper on evolution by natural selection in the fewest words. So he sent it to Darwin, and he said to Darwin, he says, listen, if you think this is worthy of publication, could you pass it on to the Royal Society? And Darwin gets this thing, and he has a breakdown. He actually has an emotional breakdown. He broke down, and he went to Charles Lyell, who was head of the Royal Society, and Charles Lyell was cultivating Darwin. Charles Lyell said he was the Johnson said the Earth is not 5,000 years old; it's millions of years old, and it's evolved. And then he was cultivating Darwin to say, and life did the same thing. So Darwin ran to Lyell with tears. He was emotionally broken. Like, the paper is here, and somebody else wrote it. And guess what? He's not from the upper class. And it's like, all of a sudden, Charles Lyell and Joseph Hooker, big botanists at the time, and Darwin were like, you mean a lower class person is going to provide the theory of evolution? Nope. What they do, among the three of them, they called it the delegate arrangement. And what they did is they had Darwin quickly write a paragraph abstract and write the theory of evolution, Charles Darwin, with his little abstract, a few sentences. And at the Royal Society meeting, they introduced the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace, second. Why? Charles Darwin now gets the credit, and he's the upper class guy. And it's funny because here's the difference between the two. That is, what would the difference on this planet be today if Alfred Russel Wallace's version, which is the same story to a certain degree as Darwin, what was the difference? Darwin's theory is summarized as what? Survival of the fittest in the struggle for existence. And Alfred Russell's theory was the elimination of the weakest. And you say, well, glass half full, glass half empty. I go, no, think about it. You have a choice to live in two worlds. One based on the survival of the fittest, and the other is based on the elimination of the weakest. Which one would you live in? And the answer is, geez, no brainer, man. It's easier not to be the bottom guy than it is to be the top guy. What do we up in the world? People fighting for the top. And Alfred Russel Wallace's commoner version was, no, the weakest ones are dropping out. So you don't have to fight your way to the top. You could be in the middle anywhere, no problem. But not in Darwinian theory. So what a profound philosophical difference, and stolen from Alfred Russel Wallace, and people don't even know who the hell he is. And in fact, today, though, the more accurate theory of evolution is Lamarck, who 50 years before Darwin was the first scientist to write the theory of evolution. He is credited as the first scientist to write evolution, but his was not a survival of the fittest story. His was all organisms are engaged with each other in the environment, and that there is a communication between the environment and the organism, so the organism could adjust its biology to match the environment. We live in harmony with the environment. This is now the coming back. After calling him a buffoon for 100 years, it now appears Lamarck's vision of evolution is the more accurate one. That we are one giant bioorganism, the entire planet, and every planet is part of the entire living organism on the planet, which is all designed to make a garden, which is all designed to be peaceful and cooperative, and elimination of the weakest. So yeah, a lion could have it goes for the weakest one, and that's it. And yet, when we look at nature, you put a Darwinian filter on the front. They show a lion's life, so you watch National Geographic, and what's the lion doing? Every 5 minutes, he's killing something and tearing something apart, and he's like, whoa, that lion, that's a terrible world to live in. I go, look, the lion eats maybe once a week or something like that, a couple of days. If it eats, it's not eating every 10 minutes, It's like, well, yeah, because National Geographic's not going to show what's the lion's life like after it eats. It lays around, plays with the other lions, and things like that. It's like, well, that's not as exciting as watching it kill something. So we have had a vision of violent world. And it's like, not really. If you're the weakest one, and if you really look at when lions are surrounding like a herd of animals, most of them don't run. Most of them are not jittery. They can stand there. They know the lion's coming, but it's not for them. It's the weakest one that gets the nervous one, because that's the design of nature. And so I'm sorry I ramble on so much.
No, it's awesome. You're a great rambler. Your rambling is full of juicy information. But let's get back to the individual for a second here. What are the parts that make up a being, a human being? If we are that thermometer, I mean, is the mercury itself our emotional body? Is the structure of that thermometer? Is that our mental structure, our mental understanding of things, and our physiological? How do we break down, and how do we get those all in alignment?
Yeah.
So that it's not cynicism that's what's left over to form the new structure, but an understanding that has a core understanding.
Yeah. Well, first thing we have to understand is this: is that we didn't come here for a violent thing at all. That we came here to be part of a garden, and as Native Americans, First Nation people have always, lived in their history. That's what we were supposed to do. If we had kept that nature of balance and harmony, then this would be a garden right now, just like the Iroquois Nation. 500 years, there was no violence in that entire population, and so we have to understand that. We have to say, well, who are we? And then you say, well, we're animals. I go, yes and no. We are animals by biology, but there's something that we've acquired that transcends animals, and there's a thing called morality. Now, it's not just us alone. I mean, elephants are probably much more human than humans are at this point, because they understand the relationship with the community and the family, and the whole thing is, it's a tight system. We're the ones that look down at everything as less intelligent than we are, so we're the big smart guys, and it turns out, no, you're not, because you don't know who you are. And the idea is this: there is more to human than a physical body. There's an energy field. And this energy field, and I say, well, what energy field? I say, well, yeah, well, physicists will talk about we're immersed in an aquarium of energy. We're swimming in energy. And I go, well, what do they call all of this energy that surrounds us? The field. I said, oh, that's a good word. I said, what does that mean? The field is like invisible moving forces that are shaping the physical world. I go, oh, that's a definition of feel. I go, spirit, invisible moving forces that are shaping the physical world. And I go, oh my God. Quantum physics is now revealing that the material world is influenced by the invisible world, the quantum field. And I say, well, what's the quantum field? I said, well, the definition is the invisible moving force. I go, is it the same as spirit? I go, yes. We're being shaped by influences from outside of us coming into us. We are responding to the environment. We are made in the image of the environment. That's what biology is all about. We are in an environment and we're being shaped by that environment. Then I say, well, what about the energy stuff that's coming in? I go, well, here's the interesting part about energy. You know, the old simple understanding, energy is neither created nor destroyed. Energy is energy. It's always here. And why is that relevant? Because bodies come and go, but identifying frequency energy fields always are here. And the fact is, now we know that a body is tuned to information in the field. And this is what gives us self. And you go, oh, now Lipton's way off base here, but let's just try to get him back on track here. And that is this: self. Definition: the cells in my body have an identity associated with me. Okay? And the significance of that is the cells in your body have an identity associated with you. I go, okay, fine. I said, yeah, but if I take my cells and put it into your body, your immune system will say, not self. It's their human cells, but they're not my human cells. And all of a sudden I say, oh, your cells have an identity to them. Why? I cannot put your cells into any other human because their immune system will say, these cells don't belong to us. They're not self. So, first important thing, there are no two humans that are the same because we can't exchange cells. I go, okay, so where the heck is this self? And the answer is this. Medical people had an insight to it for a long time, but because they're locked in a Newtonian physical world, never even understood what they were talking about. And that is this. If I want to transplant an organ into you, I recognize that you have self and I have self. And I say, yeah, but the self is made out of a what? A bunch of protein antennas, just like miniature television antennas on the surface of your cell. Now, it's not 5 antennas, it could be 50 antennas. So each antenna receiving a frequency, and so therefore we have a self. I say, what is self? Well, there are antennas on the surface of the cell called receptors that receive a signal from the environment, and the collection of all these receptors is a broadband of frequency, but no two people have the same frequencies. I go, well, this is really interesting. I go, yeah, because science actually calls these receptors, the ones that they study, self receptors. Well, they were using that to mean that the proteins were the self. But no, they didn't get it because the quantum physics is now revealing that proteins respond to energy from the, so that those protein antennas, they're tuned to a field, but they're not the self. The self is the broadcast coming from the field that activates these antennas. I go, well, wait a minute then. My identity is coming in on this broadcast picked up by these antennas. I go, if I take these antennas off the surface of the cell, remove them with an enzyme, the cell has no identity. It's not Bruce's cell anymore. It could be a liver cell, but it's not Bruce's liver cell. Why? We took off the self receptors. If I had my cells and take off the self receptors, I can put it into your body, and your body will go, it's a human cell. It's not Bruce's anymore. It's nobody. It's got no name on it. See? So all of a sudden, you remove identity by removing the antennas. As a matter of fact, if I went to your cells and took your antennas off of your cells and transplanted them onto my cell, take mine off and put yours on mine, that cell is no longer mine. I could put it into your body because it has your self receptors on it. But if I took my own cell with your receptors and put it back in my body, it's going to be rejected. Okay? So I say, oh, now I transferred ownership. By what? Transferring the antennas. I go, yeah. I go, so what's the relevance of that? I go, there's an identity picked up by the antennas that is not a physical identity. The antennas are on the outside of the cell, in fact. They're reading an environmental signal. I go, why is that relevant? And I say, imagine Bruce has a television set. And I say, yeah, and I'm playing the Bruce show. How do you know? Because it's tuned. All my cells are tuned to the same broadcast. And so I am playing the Bruce show. And I'm a television. I go, and if you're watching a TV and the television breaks, you say, oh, television's dead. No more show. It's over with. I go, Yep, television's dead. Question, is the broadcast still there? And the answer, of course the broadcast is still there. How would you know? You get another TV set, plug it in, turn it on, and then tune it to the station, and the show's back on. When I understood the nature of this with the brain, which is the membrane, and now it has like a pin number on it, my cells receive my frequency, your cells receive your frequency. If my cell dies, the broadcast is still there. I go, oh my God, I wasn't spiritual. And then that 1 second, I said, I'm not in here. I'm receiving an identity broadcast, and I can't die. Why? My identity is not in here. My identity is coming in. And I thought, oh my God. Then reincarnation. I go, yeah. An embryo shows up in the future with the same set of antennas that you have today. You're back on. But guess what? I didn't say it was a male or a female television set. I didn't say it was a white or a black. That's a TV. That's not the broadcast. So we are the broadcast in a body. So the first instant this reality hit me, I'm not spiritual 40 years, and all of a sudden 1 minute after it go, oh, yes, I'm totally spiritual. 1 minute of complete non-spiritual, spiritual, boom. And this joke that because I had, at that moment of questioning, why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be the spirit all of a sudden? Why not that? The answer, this is fun, Randall. The answer came from 50 trillion cells under my skin. I said, why have both? And the cells responded with a question. And the question was, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, this is a transducing suit. It's a virtual reality suit. I get into this suit and now I have cameras. Now I have taste. I have ears. I can hear. I can smell. I can touch. I can feel. I can have love. I said, how did all those feelings come here? I said, because the cells convert our physical reality into vibration via the nervous system. Everything's translated as energy vibration. And with a new thing called not where I put wires on your head and read your brain, it's called magnetoencephalograph, not EEG, MEG. I say, what's interesting? The probe is out here. I say, what is it doing? It's reading brain activity. All of a sudden, it's like, your brain activity is not contained in your head. It generates a field around you, which goes back to source. So what does love feel like, or what does chocolate taste like? A spirit would only have an opportunity to understand that by first being in a virtual reality suit that can convert chemistry into sensation. And then the first thing I said, oh my God, we came here to sense the world, to smell it and taste it and feel love, and that's why we're here, And I said, but wait, it's a two-way street, because where I go in the world and what I do in the world is not controlled by the cells. It's controlled by the broadcast. And all of a sudden it says, oh, wait. So let me simplify it with this one analogy, because this is a perfect analogy. We want to go to Mars to know, what is it like to be on Mars? I say, well, it can't send a human. We can't get there yet. So I say, yeah, but I still want to know, what's it like to live on Mars? So I said, okay, let's send up the Mars rover. I go, cool. What's the rover? It looks like a go-kart kind of thing. And I said, well, what's cool about it? It's got an antenna on it. I said, where's the antenna tuned to? To NASA. I go, what else does it have? Well, it has cameras. It has sound receptors. It's got chemical tasters. It can sense the environment. Why? In a way that I can understand it, it could send information back. So I send the rover up, right? It's moving around on Mars. What's it doing? Sending back pictures? You want to say, hey, this is what it's like to live on Mars? What's the temperature? Ooh, that's kind of cold. Yeah, I can feel it. What's the atmosphere? Ooh, I know what that. I can sense it. How? I'm not there. How do I do that? I send up Mars rover. Okay, and then I go, well, what's relevant about it? I said, the Mars rover is being controlled by the guy at NASA. So he sends a signal to the rover, drives the rover, and receives the sensory input coming back. It's a two-way street. Ready? We are Earth rovers.
Right. So let me bring up something.
We have a signal.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just bottom line. We drive these vehicles remote control, and all the sensory inputs of the vehicle go back to source, and the source is there and can send up a new vehicle later if it wants to come back and do it again.
So does the conscious being is the ideal for the conscious being to not project our potential onto objects, but to be that experience? I mean, like it seems like science is something that we've projected out into the world, for obviously for purposes that are useful. But it seems like what we do with this is we are projectors of our capabilities, as opposed to being that ability. Why can't we go to Mars with our awareness, right?
We can, but how come our limitation says you can't?
Right.
You see? So it turns out you can do what you believe you can do, and you can't do what you believe you can't do. So, for example, simple point. I hypnotize somebody, and I say, here's a glass of water, and I'd like you to pick it up. But before they pick it up, and again, they're hypnotized, I say, no, that glass of water weighs 1,000 pounds. And then you'll see this hypnotized person trying to lift up a glass of water, and I'm saying trying. They're sweating. They're getting red. They're breathing heavy. Their heart's pounding. They can't lift up a glass of water, and you're going, it's a glass of water. And I said, well, how'd that happen? Because the mind will take the belief and turn it into reality. If the glass of water doesn't weigh 1,000 pounds, what's the mind going to do? It weighs 1,000 pounds. What does it mean? I cannot lift this glass. So what's it going to do? What it does in a hypnotized person, it contracts the muscles to lift the glass. At the exact same time, it contracts the muscles to put the glass back down. What's the point? Two opposing muscle systems, sweating it out, no movement of the glass. Okay? It's like, wow, I created a reality of that. The guy can't lift up a glass of water because that's the belief system of it, okay? And now I'll give it another one, just because the weirdness, the opposite one, which is really mind-blowing. We have in the South in the U.S. fundamentalists work themselves up in a religious ecstasy, and they're called snake handlers. And they play with all these very poisonous snakes, and even if they get bit, that's not a big deal. But here's the point. This is the point that I'm making, is that some of them, and they call it testify. What they mean by that is they get into this religious state of ecstasy, and they want to prove that God protects them. That's why they play with the snakes. They say, look, if you're not living with God, these snakes will kill you. Now, here's the one I want to tell you about, because these are the blow your mind. Some of them testify by drinking strychnine poison, toxic doses of strychnine poison, in the belief that God protects them. And guess what? No harmful effects.
Right.
And all of a sudden you say, what's the limitation on man? I say, what's the limitation on your belief? Right. You want to walk across the hot coals? Then believe in walking across the hot coals. Right. Okay? You say, oh, let's go out in the parking lot and lift up a car. And everybody, you can't go out, you can't lift up a car. And then they show a picture of a weightlifter with muscles bulging, perspiration, lifting up the car. And then I show you articles from all over the world of women who lift up cars when their child or a friend is caught under the car. Totally non-athletic, nothing. Women lifting up a car. And I go, wow. And the people that want to justify, well, they had a lot of adrenaline. I go, that's not the point. The weightlifter had a lot of adrenaline going too. What's the difference? These people are non-athletic. What's the issue? Their belief system. My child's under the car. Oh, I can't lift it. My child will die. It's like, no way. I'm going to lift that car. Right. Boom. And all of a sudden I say, what is the limitation of a human? And I say, what have you been programmed to be limited by? And that's where it all hits the fan. It's all programming. We have been programmed. That's the Matrix story. And to try to make an analogy real quickly, so I don't want to run too much more time on this, Randall, but make an analogy simple as this. Consider an iPod the mind. Now, there's iPod, when you get it, it has a little wheel on the front called a click wheel. And that's like the conscious mind. Why? That's creative. Make a playlist, fast forward, back it up, change the volume. You can do all the controls, right? So I say, get a brand new iPod, take it out of the box, and push play. And you say, but nothing happens. I go, yeah. You say, why does nothing happen? I push play. And it's the answer. Everybody turns around and goes, there's no program in there. You can't play it if there's no program. I go, guess what? If you're conscious with no program, you have nothing to be conscious of or to think about. If a baby could speak, the moment it's born, the baby comes out of the birth canal, and the moment it comes out, you could speak, you say, tell me something. And the baby will look up at you and go, I don't know anything. I just got here. The whole idea is this. You want to be conscious, first you have a program. And the first 7 years, as the Jesuits found out 400 years ago, is the programmable period, where an infant child learns all the rules of how to deal with the world and how to deal with adults and how to deal with kids and how to deal with a policeman, which is different than, every nuance of how to deal. How does a 7-year-old learn all this? And the answer is for 7 years they're in a state of hypnosis, theta, EEG. And they download the patterns that fit into a family and the patterns that fit into a culture and the patterns of how to respond to the world. And they do it by just observing first mother and father. And why is that relevant? Because the fundamental programs in our subconscious mind are not our programs. They were downloaded by observing other people who don't even have your wishes and desires. So their programs are not necessarily going to take you anywhere you want to go. Matter of fact, most of these programs psychologists tell us are limiting and self-sabotaging and disempowering, 70% or more. So the relevance is this. We've been programmed subconsciously to be part of a family and a community and a culture by downloading through hypnosis, observing other people and their behavior, and that becomes our subconscious behavior. And then you say, yeah, but I'm going to use my conscious mind, my creative mind. Because the creative mind is what makes humans have that ability to make a rocket ship or a computer. We're creative. And the creative mind has wishes and desires. So you say, well then I wish to be successful. I wish to be happy. I wish to have a great relationship. Whatever your wishes are, I say that's creative thinking. And I say, so when you are mindful, then you're running your biology with your creative wishing. And I go, yes, now here's the fallback problem. Science has recognized that the conscious mind, which is also capable of thinking, thinks about 95% of the time during the day. You say, well, why is that relevant? Because I say when you're thinking, by definition, you're not paying attention with your conscious mind. So I say, Randall, what are you doing on Thursday? And for a moment, you have to go in your head and say, Thursday, what am I thinking? You're in your head. And I go, well, yeah, but during that moment you were in your head, your conscious mind was busy, it wasn't paying attention. So you're not running your life with your conscious mind when you're thinking. I say, well, 95% of our day is thinking. So that means 95% of our life is coming from the default programs, which are what? Subconscious. I go, yeah, but they're not yours. So we have this belief I'm going out in the world to create what I want. And then at the end of the day, it's like, it didn't work. I don't know, it didn't work. The universe is against me. I'm a victim. And I go, no, you were not observing yourself 95% of the day playing these negative, disempowering, limiting programs in the subconscious. If I just, I see the time thing, and I really want to get this down because I want people to understand it, and it's really important. So I give an analogy in a lecture, and I say, look, sometime growing up, you had a friend, you knew your friend's behavior very, very well, and you knew your friend's parent. And at one point you say, your friend has behaved like your parents. So you get, that's so really cool. Hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And you back away from Bill. Because Bill goes totally ballistic. How can you compare me to my dad? And most everybody laughs because they had that experience. I go, let me tell you the most profound story that it represents. It is the most profound story. I said, what does it mean? I go, look, everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. I said, well, what does that mean? Well, A, where did he get the behavior? Downloaded by observing his dad. B, why is he playing it? Because his conscious mind is 95% in thought, not paying attention. And when you're having a thought, it doesn't mean just freeze in your space. If you're driving, you're still driving. If you're walking, you're still walking. Well, I say, well, who's controlling it if my head's busy? And I say, automatic default subconscious program. Relevance? Well, if you're playing the default program, you're playing because you're not paying attention. So that means 95% of the day, you don't even see your own behavior. And as the Jesuits knew, we were programmed. And if people program you by taking away your power, then 95% of the day you were powerless. And then at the end of the day, you just can't figure out how come my great wishes and desires didn't manifest. And the answer is because you were not mindful. And then I say, there is one time in your life where now you take the red pill and you stop playing the program. I say, what happens if I stop playing the program? And the answer is the honeymoon, when people fall in love. no matter how crappy their life is up to that moment, they fall in love and it's heaven on earth. It's like, it was crap yesterday. I meet this person today. It's heaven on earth. What happened? And the answer is because science has found out the one time you don't default to the subconscious program is when you're falling in love. Because when you're falling in love, everything you were dreaming of is in front of your face. So why would you let your mind wander at the moment that everything was there? And therefore, you keep your mind mindful, and you're now operating 90% or more of the day on what? Wishes and desires. And then between two people working on wishes and desires, they manifest heaven on earth. And then unfortunately the honeymoon ends because at some point life gets busy, thinking comes back in, and the moment you're thinking, default, these behaviors come out that were never part of the relationship because now you're playing your father or your mother's behavior in front of your partner when you never played that when you were mindful because you never defaulted. So all of a sudden these negative behaviors show up in the relationship. It's like, well, the honeymoon was so beautiful. Where all this behavior come from? And we start to lose it again. But the simple reality is what? What is the consequence of not playing the program? And the answer is you created heaven on earth. If we got out of the disempowering, limiting programs that the government and church have put on our heads, knowingly for 400 years, then we are all empowered to manifest heaven on earth. And that was our intention of being here, not the Darwinian belief that only the fittest can have that reality. That's I call it BS, which means belief system. That's belief system. And the fact is, no, we are truly powerful creators, except we don't believe it. Can't walk across the coal if you don't believe it. You can't manifest something on this planet if you don't believe it. And that's biology of belief in a nutshell.
So just what has to be in alignment for belief to have power?
What has to be in alignment is that you have to be conscious, or you have to rewrite the subconscious programs to put the program that you want in there so that when you're not paying attention and you default, you're not defaulting to a self-sabotaging program. If you took all your wishes and desires and made those your subconscious programs, then you will succeed in this life whether you pay attention or not, because the programs will get you there. This is a controlled program device. It's seeking out a destination that you put in your head. Well, if you put your desires in your head, wishes, love, and all that kind of stuff like that, and get in the honeymoon, you created what you wished. But if you default to the existing programs, that was to disempower you so that others have power over you. And the unfortunate part is the few that are carrying this power have some disbelief in the Darwinian world that they're the fittest ones and they should be able to tell us how to control the world, and they're destroying the world faster than anybody could, because it's people, you and I and all the people on listening here, we're the ones that if we were running by wishes and desires, we would manifest heaven on earth. They're manifesting like we're in charge. It's like, well, no, nature doesn't give a damn about the individual.
Well,
Nature gives a damn about the group.
I interview lots of people, and the most popular video that I've got out there is with Kevin O'Leary. Do you know who he is?
Not personally, no.
Oh, but he's a venture capitalist that's a big radio TV personality, and his mantra is, "I want to go to sleep richer than I woke up." That's his mantra, right? But he gets far more views than anybody else that I have interviewed. I mean, although you're saying it's an elite group, it seems like there's a large portion of the population that their whole goal is to be part of that elite group. So,
but they're programmed because that's what they've been. What do you want? I want the American dream.
Right.
Well, here's the picture. You want that? Then try and work for it. And in the meantime, the top people will keep you from getting the American dream to keep you underneath pushing to get there.
Right. The ultimate worker is the motivated worker.
Yeah. Yeah, the motivated worker. But what we need is we have to start making work be in harmony with the world.
Right.
And our work is not in harmony with the world. Our work is, okay, let's put more Roundup out there and kill some more things and grow some more GMOs and let's, soil the atmosphere with all this pollution and frack the world and throw all that chemistry and, give the earth an enema with a fracturing thing. It's like, oh my God, this is not what we're here for, and this is not the intention. Except we are being programmed by those whose wishes are Darwinian. It's not a conspiracy. If the belief of Darwin is right, then the fittest should be controlling the less fit, and they don't know anything, and the fittest know things, and therefore they are being parental and saying, this is what you need. It's sort of like not saying, letting me or letting you, Randall, say, what do you need? They're coming from the top saying, this is what you need. And it's like, no, that's not what I need. And as people start to become more conscious and disconnect, the power of that system starts to disappear really fast, because it only works if the people support the system. And that's why I'm saying, yeah, and that's why this evolution is happening right now. When you get 50% of people that don't give a damn, that's when the system is ready to change.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. For you, is it a matter of 51%, or is it a critical mass of awareness?
What's that? To make the evolutionary jump?
Yeah.
Doesn't require 50% at all. It only requires a much smaller percent. A small percent in coherence is much more powerful than a large percent that's not coherent. So it's not 50% at all. It's a lot less. And we're pretty close to the edge. In fact, even in another presidential election, if some spirit moved a large number of these millennial generation people, in one election, boom, the whole thing is done. They get rid of all those idiots that we've been electing for years. Get them all new set, representing them, not the old people. And so how can that happen? How soon can that happen? The answer is, could happen next year. What do I know? But it's not very far away, because extinction is not very far away. And it's been established that industrial civilization will totally collapse within a few decades. So that means 10, 20 years. It's gone. And so the simple reality is either you wait it out and it crashes, or it's dismantling itself now and rebuilding. And so the work that you're doing here is part of the rebuilding process. This is cultural creative stuff you're doing, Randall. You're putting new vision and ideas in a world that says you're going to rebuild the world. Let's rebuild it with some awareness.
Mm-hmm. Conscious evolution.
Exactly what it's all about, because it's not physical evolution. The human body is not evolving here. It's the consciousness that's changing that will create the super organism called humanity.
And what you've shown is that the biology follows the belief, the paradigm. So
absolutely.
we can consciously evolve.
Absolutely. But you have to have you don't have to have limitation. You have to get rid of the limitations of that programming for 400 years that has disempowered you to make people live in fear, to extract whatever wealth they can from fear. Because fear is a great motivator. It's like you're built to survive. If I'm living in fear, then I'm going to do any damn thing I can to not die. What do you want me to pay you? Okay, here's the money, and that's what people have done. Give away your power. Why? Because somebody said they're going to save you. It's like, no, man, save yourself. You got to do that, but you have to take back your power, and that's the Matrix story.
The last question I ask everybody, and I make these little video memes, is if you could make a public service message to humanity, what would you say?
I would basically say there's a time of evolution happening here where we've come away from being a victim. Like we've been programmed, we're a victim of our genes. Oh, my heredity is controlling cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. It's like, no, it's not. It's your life that's controlling that, and you're the one that can change your life. And the reality is to know how we work, and knowledge is power, and we have been deprived of the knowledge of what a human is because we bought into it's just a mechanical device controlled by genes. It's like, no, it's a lot more than that. It's a creative mechanism that's remotely controlled, and the design is to do what? To be part of an ecology. We are part of a garden. It was our separation from the garden that created all the problem, because then you've lost the meaning of the garden, which is you. And so most people who don't care about the garden is like, yeah, throw all the plastic in the thing there and pollute all that. It's like, what do I care? And it's like, what do you mean, what do you care? You are the garden. If the garden's not doing well, you're not going to do well. And so we have to wake up. And to me, the joke, final line, the joke, we've been led to believe that, okay, you come to this planet, you live out this life, plays of morality according to religion, you're out here doing all this to do what? To see if you're worthy to go to a place called heaven. And here's the joke. This is heaven. Why? If spirit wants to create something, it needs this earth rover to move and make it do things and stuff like that. Otherwise, it's just mentation. It's just a consciousness. You want to know what love is like? Then you have to feel what love is like. Well, how do you feel what love is like? Well, love is a chemical inside my body. I have to have it in here so my spirit knows what it's all about. So I came here to do what? To create, to sense, to make a garden, to live heaven on earth. That's why I'm here. I go, well, did you live it? I said, well, sometimes people get a little piece of that when they have that honeymoon piece. Otherwise, the rest of it is like a struggle. Because why? Because we were told it was a struggle. And so the whole point is this. We are born into heaven. If you waste this trip and then you're dead and then you so-called meet, St. Peter or some gate somewhere, and he'll look at you and go, well, how was your visit to heaven? And you look, huh? It's like, didn't you go to create your vision? The answer is, well, I did, but apparently other visions really were created for me by people who programmed my vision maker. So it's a wake-up time. It's an evolution, and there will be people who wake up and will evolve into the garden. There'll be people who, the stress of this undoing of the structure will cause them to drop out. So it's like, be ready to learn and be ready. We are moving from here to a better place.
Thank you so much. You're just a joy to talk with, really. It's
I hope this is useful to you, Randall. And of course, I love people to hear the message, because if they all start making heaven, then my world gets better, because all around me will be heaven.
all of us.
But I make where I live now, so I'm not waiting for them. Okay, my dear friends, thank you so very much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you so much.